All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. We're really excited for today's event. We have some incredible guests who are going to be joining us and speaking with us today. So we couldn't be more excited to be hosting another event in partnership with the Gord, Downie, and Chanie Wenjack Fund. So the Downie Wenjack Fund is part of musician Gord Downie's legacy and embodies his commitment and that of both the Downie and Wenjack families to call Canadians to action in solidarity with Indigenous peoples of this land. So the goal is to continue the conversation that began with Chanie Wenjack's residential school story and to support the reconciliation process through awareness, education, and action. So like I said, we are thrilled to have very special guests today. We have Chanie Wenjack's sisters, Pearl Achneepineskum and Daisy Munroe, joining us today as we remember what would have been their brother's 66th birthday last Sunday. So they're joining us from Dennis Franklin Cromarty High School in Thunder Bay. And over the years, the Wenjack family has grown to over 200 people living across Canada, including Ogoki Post, Thunder Bay, and as far north as Pond Inlet, Nunavut. So Pearl and Daisy have been incredible advocates for sharing their brother's story, especially with Canada's youth. So Pearl and Daisy, it is such an honor to have you joining us live today and to be hosting you. We're really looking forward to getting to know you a little bit better today. We've got a great group of classrooms from across North America tuning in with us. And we're looking forward to hearing your brother's story from your perspective. So it's great to have you joining us from Thunder Bay today.
Good afternoon. My name is Pearl, and I live at Martin Falls. And I've lived there since I was born, but I had gone to school 8 years of my life, including 2 years after for high school. The reason why the story was told, I was the one that was at home when they brought Charlie home in a coffin. And that turned my life around and almost hit rock bottom. But I thought that that this wasn't going to end at that time. I had always wanted to tell this story. And so that's what I began to do. Whoever listened, I would tell them what had happened and the impacts that I saw from that. It wasn't just only me. It was my whole family, and it was especially my parents. My parents that hit rock bottom with his death. They never understood, as the government promised us that they would take care of them. And when that happened, when I saw my parents not almost recover from that, that's when I went really full force to try and tell his story. And it came about, that was back in 1966. And I kept on going. In every meeting that I went, I would tell anybody the story. If I met people on the plane, I would tell, especially the white people, the story. And I kept on doing this for all those years until one day Mike called me and said that they had made songs about Charlie, 10 songs to be exact. And he had asked if he would come and visit us in Martin Falls. And I said that they could. And because they said, we don't know what else to do. So So when they did come, you know, that's when all the other ideas of how to put it on a national platform came about. I had always wanted to tell everybody the story, but I just didn't know how I would do it on a national basis. And when he had called, I knew then that it would be told at a national basis. And I'm glad. I wanted to make everybody aware of what happened with these little kids. These little kids that were promised a golden future, safety, and love. Those actually were the ones that were absent in our life. The promises that was made to the children. They were absent in life because no one at that school really thought of them as human beings. And I had also wanted to have the children heard rather than being told to be quiet. I wanted children's voices to be laughing. I wanted children to be seen. And if that is what it takes to expose these children to be thought of as human beings, then so be it. I know when I walk this road again, over and over again, I know it hurts. But I want to do that. There's many tears that fall when I walk this road again. But to save the lives of the native children that only want to live, that only want to enjoy life, I'll do it. And I want to say how glad I am that all you children are interested in hearing this. I also have with me my son William, who is beside me here. He's my youngest son, and my granddaughter Sunset. And I've always been glad to see the happiness when I walk around in this school here today. I see the stuff that they do, the pictures that they draw. You know, it says something about them, that that they are going to enjoy life. And I hope other people give them that space to enjoy life to its fullest. That's all I wish for. Neeraj.
All right, and that's, you know, I think that's a wish that everybody can relate to, is having that wish that everybody should have a chance to enjoy life, be young, and be with their family. And I think that's why this story resonates so much, is your brother, you know, that desire to be home. He wanted to be home. And I think that story resonates with children across Canada. So it's so brave of you to share that story, to be sharing it for years and years, because I know it's not easy to do so, but it is having a huge impact in classrooms across Canada, with people across Canada. And today is a good example. We have legacy schools joining from across Canada today, who are doing activities in their classrooms, sharing stories, and doing something to work towards reconciliation. So again, it's really awesome to have your family here today, different generations of your family, and to share Chanie's story. So I do want to ask, because you mentioned Mike a little bit earlier in your story. So Mike Downie, Gord's brother, we hosted Mike last October, and he shared during Secret Path Week a little bit about how he came upon your brother's story. He was driving in his car, he heard the story, he pulled over right away to take it in, and it really it impacted him in that car, and he knew he wanted to do something. So he talked to his brother Gord, and then they reached out to you. How did you feel after telling your story for so long, when someone like Mike reached out and called you? How did you feel? Were you hesitant at first? Were you nervous, or were you just excited that your brother's story was going to get this large platform? How did you feel when you first got that call from Mike?
I was excited. My first choice for someone to tell a story on a national basis was Oprah Winfrey. That obviously didn't happen. When Mike called, I knew then that as soon as I heard that Gord and Tragically Hip were connected, I knew then it would go that far.
Amazing. And so, you and your sister have been able to travel across Canada to share this story. You visited a lot of school children in the process. What is something that has struck you, or what is something you take away from meeting youth and sharing your brother's story? What is something that's really impacted you?
I think I'll first on Daisy Munroe. I'm the oldest of the girls. There were 7 of us. I don't live in Ogoki anymore. I work for Mishki, and just to let the parents know if they're watching on YouTube, I managed to get some of my students in the audience, because to me it's very important for them to know about the history behind residential schools, because we have 7 generations that have gone through residential schools from the community I work for, and I've been there since 1982, and I think pretty soon they're going to have to move me out because I'm getting too attached to them. Anyway, with this residential school, we've been working on it. My sister and I sat on a working group with another 8 others from different communities around James Bay and Northern Ontario, and we got it come out when the class action suits started and the payouts started, all that. But it's more than that to us, like telling the story, their stories is also important to me, and to hear their stories. And I know it's painful for a lot of survivors and all that, and grandparents, they're now grandparents and all that, and to try to tell their children their stories and all that, it always takes time and painful. So it's good that the Secret Path is out there doing it across Canada and all that. And I'd like to thank all the schools that called in to be a part of this book. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, last October, we hosted 14 Secret Path Week events. We had thousands of students from across North America join in to meet Indigenous leaders, scientists, artists, and explorers. So it was an absolutely amazing week. We really enjoyed speaking with Harriet Visitor on Monday of this week, and we have such an awesome group of classrooms who are joining us live today. I want to give a few shout outs to the YouTube groups who have introduced themselves so far, just to give you an idea of some of the groups we have joining us. We've got Baldinal Northeastern in British Columbia joining us. We've got Collingwood School in West Vancouver. Group in Edmonton is joining us as well. Peterborough, grade 5s in Peterborough, Ontario are joining us. Whitby, Ontario, we've got a grade 6 French immersion class there. Altona Forest in Pickering is hanging out with us. Highview Public School in Aurora, Ontario. Another group in Pickering. Let's see. Morrison Middle School in Toronto hanging out with us. We've got groups as far away as Alabama tuning in right now. in the US, Hoover, Alabama. So shout out to Mr. Richardson's group. Mrs. Gill's joining us in Cambridge. So many classrooms. I'll try and do a few more shout outs as we get a little further in. There's too many classrooms to shout out to them all right now, but I'll get some more of those in. But let's meet some of our camera classrooms and let's get some of their questions for Pearl and Daisy. So let's see, I'm gonna start off first. I'm gonna go to Whitney, Ontario. We've got students from grade 4 to 8 joining us with Mrs. Poff. Let me get their microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, boys and girls? All right, nice and loud for us.
How are we doing? Good.
All right, who's got a question?
If he didn't run away, if Chanie didn't run away from the residential schools, how long would he had to stay there? What?
Okay, so I can relay that question. They're wondering if your brother had not run away from residential school, how long do you think he would have had to stay at the residential school?
From September, beginning of September to the end of June.
Okay, so for the school year, and then I think they're curious to, you know, how long would that have gone on for? His entire kind of school career, each year having to go back to the residential school?
Yes, till grade 8, I think.
Yep.
From grade 1 to grade 5 was at the school. Then we got into integrating after that to 5 to 6 to 8. And then after that, you can still stay there if you're going on to grade 9 to grade 12.
Okay. All right, let's move to our next group joining us live. This time we're going to go to Waterloo. We've got grade 7 and 8 students with Mrs. Giannopoulos. Let me see if I can track down their microphone. There it is. How are you doing, grade 7, 8?
We're from McGregor and we're the change makers, Mustang change makers, and we're fortunate to have you here. Our first question is, what can we do to help further educate people on the Chanie Wenjack fund?
Okay, so I'll pass that question on. I'll amplify that question a little louder. I love your flag in the background. Can you guys hold that flag up for us? Awesome. So their question is, they're wondering, Pearl and Daisy, what would you like to see students do to further the legacy, further share the story?
What was the question?
The students are wondering what you would like to see students doing in their classrooms to further share your brother's story and the work of the Chanie Wenjack Fund.
The Secret Path book has, I think it's loaded on the internet. There's a teaching curriculum online. It's from grades, beginning? Yeah, grade 6, I believe. And it's got everything there. And if you want to carry on the story, you can follow that.
Yeah. And have you, I know some classrooms have done things, they've organized walks of their own in their classrooms. They've done really incredible art projects based on having read the poems from Secret Path. So there's lots of ways that students can help share the story and make sure that others are hearing the story as well. So I'm going to duck back to YouTube because I know we've got some questions coming from YouTube. I'm going to give a shout out to a few more classrooms now that we're back here. So Mrs. Cheng's group in Pickering, Ontario, grade 5-6s. Pickle Lake, Ontario is joining us. Mrs. Bruce's grade 8s at Algonquin Public School in Woodstock. Shout out to Mr. Levine's group in Ottawa. And then Petawawa, Ontario. We've got some grade 6, 7, 8s hanging out with Mrs. Clark as well. And so let's see, let's grab a question from online this time. Okay, so when we talked to Harriet early in the week, she mentioned that it was a while before the family talked a lot about your brother's story, about Chanie's story. So there's a classroom online. They're just wondering about the family's reaction when they heard that Chanie had run away from residential school. They're wondering about your family's reaction and how you dealt with it when you found out that happened.
Like I said, I was home when this happened. We didn't know he had run away.
There was no such thing as cell phones at that time. There was a phone, but it was a one-ring two kind of phone. And if you happened to be at that booth, you could pick up the phone. There also was no any way to communicate to back home kind of thing. Because the only way I found out about his death was CBC. CBC aired it from Winnipeg. And when that happened, they just started shipping us home.
The way we found out was the day that they brought up his coffin home. That was the time that we found out he had passed on. Nothing was said before.
No, that's unbelievable, and to find out that way, it must have been really devastating, really hard for your family. And like you said, it was a different time back then. We didn't have phones, we didn't have instant communication, and yeah, it's not a great way to find out that something like that did happen. So I can imagine what that did to you, finding that out, especially from something like the media, from a CBC story, or from the arrival of the coffin. So I can see why that's would have such a huge impact on your lives, and why you want to share that story so much, to make sure things like this don't happen again in the future. Because even though it's a dark part of Canada's history, it's something that needs to be shared, so that we can make sure things like that don't happen again. So we're going to jump to another live classroom. We have Mrs. Mason's group joining us. They're a grade 8 classroom. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing today, grade 8s? All right, who's got a question for us? Nice and loud.
What would happen if you didn't go back after the summer?
Okay, that's a great question. So Pearl and Daisy, they're wondering, if you were attending a residential school, but you didn't go back after the summer, what would have happened?
There was no residential school in the summer. That was the only time we got home. But you had no choice. You had no choice whether you wanted to go to the school or not.
Yeah, so that's what they're curious about, is if you didn't go back at the end of the summer break, I think they're wondering what would have happened. Would someone have come to collect you? What would have happened?
They collected you in the beginning. They made sure you went.
Yeah.
Most of those flying communities, the plane was sent with a list of all the kids that had to go to school. And if your name was on it, you had to get on a plane.
All right. It's it's unbelievable. It's hard to think about, in the time that we're living in now, but I can only imagine what students, what kids were feeling, what you felt, when someone arrives and you have to get on that plane, you have to leave your family. That would have been just incredibly difficult, and just I don't know, it's hard to even find the right words to think about how kids would have felt at that age. So we have Mrs. Burr's class. They are joining us in Brockville, Ontario, grade 6 students hanging out with us. I'm going to turn their microphone on. How are we doing today, Brockville? All right, who's got a question for us?
What did you feel like what did you lose at the residential school?
Sorry, but I heard the end of that, the residential school. What was the first part?
Like, what did you lose?
Oh, what did you do?
No, lose. Like, did you lose something, like clothes or something?
Oh, okay. So Mrs. Burr's class in Brockville, they're wondering when you arrived at the residential school, what did you lose? What did they take away from you? Did they take, clothing from you? Did they take toys or other family objects? Did they take things away when you got to the residential school?
The first thing that happened when we went back to school year after year, the same intake is they literally DT. There's a DDT that they put on your hair for just in case you have lice all over your body. They cut your hair to what length they want, kind of thing, because we all had the same haircuts. And they also put on. Well, the uniforms were only, Macintosh had uniforms, Pelican had uniforms, but the one we went to didn't have uniforms. But most of the clothing was almost the same. And they gave you a number. They didn't put your name on it, they gave you a number.
Terrible treatment and, almost inhuman treatment to give you a number, cut your hair, and those kind of treatments. That's it's hard to hear those stories, but it's so important and so powerful that you are sharing those stories with us, those stories from our past. I want to say hi to Edmonton, Alberta. We have a classroom joining us there, grade 7s. They're in the event, but we can't see them. So if you, Mrs. Dodd's group, if you want to send a question for Pearl and Daisy via the chat sidebar, I will keep an eye out for that. But while we wait for that question, we are going to visit our group at Dryden High School. So we have some high school students joining us in Dryden. Let me see if I can get their microphone turned on.
Hello.
All right. Hi, Dryden. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much to Pearl and Daisy for coming to speak to us today via video screen. So I have one question that was asked in my classroom yesterday, and with permission of the student, I'm just going to forward that to you. So when we talked about residential schools, and they'd heard a little bit in previous years, and certainly in the fall when we were involved, a student asked if there were still residential schools, and students, are they still forced with the decision to have to leave their home communities, maybe after grade 8 or even younger? And if so, what are some challenges or some positive changes that you have seen with students who are put into this position?
Okay, so they're wondering about today in residential schools. Are there still residential schools in Canada, or is that something we've left in the past?
I believe the last one was closed in 1997. But as far as where the kids want to go now, that's up to them, and also up to the parents to where they send the children.
Okay, so last one.
There is elementary on reserves now, K4 to grade 8. And we also have the internet high schools that are 9 to 12, and WASA programs that are on reserve. So the kids do have choices, wider choices. At least on our side anyway, we have wider choices. In Matawa, I don't know, I think it's a little different. Like the students that are here in Thunder Bay are in the boarding home program. some of the students here, their parents live in town, but they also they're under a tuition agreement so they can attend the DFC high school. So they do have wide choices, but it's still, a lot of parents do allow their children to leave the reserves to go out to high school to come here and also to attend provincial high schools.
All right. Yeah, 1997. I mean, that's not that long ago, and that's still 30 years after, you know, your brother's passing away. So it went on for quite some time in Canada. You know, 1997 is not that long ago. So Harriet is tuning in online right now. Harriet just sent in a message. Oops, it just went off my screen. There it is. So Harriet says, "Hi, Mom. Hi, Aunt Pearl. I'm watching from my office in Sioux Lookout right now." So she's watching during her lunch, tuning into today's event. So Harriet says hi. And then there's another question from Mrs. Metler's group online, and they're wondering, are you ever in touch with any buddy who went to the same residential school as Chanie? Have you been in touch with anybody who was at the school at the same time as him?
Only by phone. There's very few survivors, and his friends, I think, have all the ones that he ran away with. I think all of his friends have gone to the spirit world, and we had really wanted to touch base with them before they leave this world, but that was unfortunate that we couldn't.
Yeah. So our group in Alberta, in Edmonton, they sent me a question via the chat. This is Miss Dodd's group, and they're wondering how you feel about non-Indigenous people telling or sharing your story. Any hesitation, or is it something that you think is a really good thing and really helping having non-Indigenous people tell the story?
Doesn't really matter, because once they do that, they're stepping over the threshold of getting along with the other colors of people. And I cherish the thought that they are doing it, that they're brave enough to do it, but they're brave enough to do something to make other people aware of it. I'm glad that there is a lot of people that are telling the story that are non-Indigenous, and I'm very glad that they are doing it.
All right. I have another message to share from online. Tara Charlie Munroe, so Daisy's granddaughter, and Trevor Munroe, Daisy's great-grandchild, and her son are watching from Valhalla, and the kids say, "Love you, Grandma." So that's a message that just came in via YouTube. So lots of family are tuning in right now to listen to you speak, to listen to you share the story. So that's so amazing. You've got to love the power of technology to be able to connect so many people. And so it's so great to have so many members of the Wenjack family tuning in to this event right now. And there's a question from Mrs. Cameron's group, and one of their students wants to know about if there was punishment at school if you use your own language at the residential school, if you spoke your native language at the residential schools.
Did you ask if there was punishment for that?
Yeah, if you used your native tongue, your native language.
Yeah, I remember that they would do it because they would tell us that it was rude to speak our tongue in front of the white folks. And sometimes the punishment was the strap, or they didn't eat that evening, or that you would pay 10 cents every time that you use the language. I remember one year that I only paid 20 cents.
So a really common theme that's coming in from the class, different classes watching online is, you know, a lot of the students are between 10 to 13 years old who are watching right now. So kind of grades 4 to grade 8. And this question has come up a few times online, and they're wondering about a message. If you could say something to students across Canada, something you want them to take away, or something you want them to feel, what would you say to students across Canada, young students who are starting to find their voices and look for ways to have an impact? What would you say to young students?
I'd say for the young students, listen to your parents. That's the number one thing. Don't matter what kind of parents you have, they still know what's good for you. The other thing is to continue your education. Be proud of who you are, whether you're black, yellow, white, red. Be proud of who you are. And also, Gord Downie always believed that everybody do something. Do something. Doesn't matter how old you are. You can do something that can make a difference with the rest of the world.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, speaking of Gord, you know, earlier today I watched some footage, some backstage footage from you and Daisy backstage. It looked like it was at Canada Day, and talking to Gord and sharing that story on stage. And something that really struck me is Gord said he was nervous, and he asked you if you were nervous, and you're like, "Oh no, I'm not nervous at all." And that really struck me. I think, you know, anytime that I've heard the two of you speak, you do so well. You do with such conviction. You share the story so well, and it really has an impact every time you share it. So thank you for opening up with us today, for sharing with the classrooms we had across North America. It's so neat that so many of your family members were tuning in. It's great to have Sunset and William joining us. So thank you so much for supporting your family in this way. And I think, you know, unless there's something that you want to say to the classrooms before we sign off, I'm going to turn on the microphones in just a moment. We'll give them a chance to say goodbye and thank you. But again, it's really powerful to see the way your family supports each other and has worked so hard to share this story, and how it's just exploded into kind of our national awareness. So thank you for everything you do, and thank you for sharing what is a really tough story in the life of your family.
I'd like to say my thank you. I'd like to encourage the students that I work with from Mish. Ask your parents those questions. Find out where they went to school. Find out, and you will find out, because it's a part of our history. The residential school, it will always be a part of our history. It's also the language that we have to start learning and start respecting and start using. And as for the other kids that are listening, the different nationalities that are listening, yours is important too. Your language, your background, where your parents came from, were they born here, or where did your grandpa come from, grandma come from? Those are your history. So take time to find out those things. And I thank my family for coming out and being here with me, being here with us and all that, and my grandchildren and the people from Pickle Lake. I know the kids at the school. I do work with the ones in the school in Pickle Lake too. So if Mish is watching, this is your children that I could drag out from to come and sit with me. Yep.
Well, we had classrooms from Pickle Lake, Saskatchewan, Edmonton, British Columbia, Ontario. So we had just an amazing group of classrooms joining us today. Lots of messages popping up that are saying, you know, thank you for your courage, thank you for your honesty, lots of best wishes. And I think when I turn the microphones on, boys and girls, if you want to say thank you, Megwitch, if you want to say thank you, those microphones are coming on right now. So a big thank you from our classrooms. Right now, the microphones are on. Go ahead, boys and girls.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much to the high school in Thunder Bay for providing a space for you to come in and share the story with us today. Thank you to your family, and Pearl and Daisy. Again, thank you for what you're doing, for what you're going to continue doing, and making sure that this story is shared and part of Canada's history. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hopefully a future event with classrooms again across Canada.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone, boys and girls. Enjoy the rest of your weeks.
Stand up so wave to the camera.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, everyone. We're going to take things off YouTube now.
Good night.